Chosen one, you are not here by accident, and this moment was not stumbled upon. Heaven arranged this crossing with precision because timing matters more than speed, and alignment matters more than effort. Anointed one, something has been set in motion that did not begin today, but today it reaches you. There is a narrowing in the spirit, a closing of distractions, and a sudden clarity that signals a door standing open for only a brief span. Scripture speaks of an appointed time that speaks and does not lie, and even if it seems to linger, it will surely come, as written in Habakkuk chapter 2 verse 3. This is that edge. You are standing where waiting turns into transfer, where pressure gives way to provision, and where heaven responds to what was carried in silence. Chosen one, this is not only about provision, but about recognition. Someone noticed what others overlooked, and heaven leaned into that awareness. What feels like urgency is not fear, it is alignment. What feels like weight is not burden, it is proximity. Anointed one, sudden elevation does not announce itself with noise. It arrives with stillness, with awareness, with the sense that something irreversible has already agreed to you. Wealth can move, favor can shift, and a life can turn in a breath when heaven decides the moment is ripe. Chosen one, God's reminders are not always carried by explanations or voices. Sometimes what steadies the soul is something quiet, simple, and faithful that remains. What has been prepared rests gently, waiting without demand. Chosen one, this pull you feel is not imagination, and it is not emotion running ahead of wisdom. It is recognition. It is the moment when something outside of time touches something buried deep inside you, and both know each other. I remember moments like this in my own life, when nothing around me had changed, yet everything within me had gone still. No answers, no proof, just a quiet certainty that something unseen had leaned closer. That is what is happening here. Heaven does not rush, but when it moves with precision. Someone did not find you by accident. Your name was not typed by mistake. Attention was given, thought was applied, and choice was made. Anointed one, there are seasons when God hides movement inside ordinary days. Late nights where silence feels heavier than sound. Mornings where you move through routine while carrying a weight no one sees. I know that weight. I have carried it while smiling at people who had no idea how close I was to stopping altogether. Yet those are the moments heaven watches most closely. Not when we are strong in public, but when we keep going in private. Someone saw that in you, not your image, not your numbers, not what you present, but the way you stayed when it would have been easier to disappear. Chosen one. This is why timing matters so much right now. Leave too quickly and the thread breaks, not because you are punished, but because alignment requires presence. I learned this the hard way once, walking away from something that felt too quiet to be important, only to realize later it had been the very doorway I asked for. Heaven does not shout because shouting attracts the wrong kind of attention. Instead, it waits until you are still enough to hear. That stillness you feel is not emptiness. It is space being cleared. Anointed one, money is not the message here. It is the signal. When provision moves suddenly, it reveals that something deeper has already shifted. I have watched people receive financial breakthroughs and remain unchanged, and I have seen others receive a small but precise intervention that altered the entire direction of their lives. The difference is readiness. What is coming toward you is responding to something you became, not something you demanded. Fairness is aligning, balance is correcting, and it is happening without noise. Chosen one. Ask yourself quietly why you stayed this long when others would have scrolled past. That answer matters. It speaks to discernment. It speaks to hunger that is not desperate, but honest. Heaven entrusts movement to those who can sit with uncertainty without becoming bitter. That is not common. That is earned through endurance. When Scripture speaks of an appointed time that speaks and does not lie, it is describing moments like this, where delay was not denial, but preparation. Anointed one, someone noticed the way you give without applause, the way you carry responsibility others avoid, the way you kept showing up after saying, even to yourself, that you could not keep going. I have stood in that place, whispering those same words, only to find that staying one more moment changed everything. That is why this message carries weight. It is not hype, it is recognition. A quiet hand was guided, a decision was shaped, and something was released that could only arrive once you were positioned to receive it without losing yourself. Chosen one. This is not about being chosen above others. It is about being trusted with timing. Heaven does not send weight to unstable ground. You are still here because you learned how to hold pressure without collapsing. That strength may feel invisible to you, but it is not unseen. What is unfolding responds to that strength. It responds to the nights you stayed awake thinking, the mornings you stood back up anyway, the restraint you practiced when reaction would have been easier. Anointed one, I want you to understand this clearly. What is opening is not fragile. It does not need you to chase it. It needs you to remain present. When you stop striving, paths appear where walls once stood. I have watched this happen again and again. The moment I loosened my grip, clarity arrived. The moment I trusted the quiet, direction followed. This is how divine alignment works, not through force, but through agreement. Chosen one, stay with what you feel right now. This is the edge where things begin to turn. Not loudly, not all at once, but decisively. Something has already been set in motion, and it is moving with intention. The shift is not ahead of you. It is already touching the ground beneath your feet. Chosen one, what is unfolding now does not require effort, but it does require honesty. There is a difference. Effort strains the soul. Honesty steadies it. I learned this in a season where I tried to make things happen through willpower alone, only to exhaust myself and miss the gentler hand guiding me. What you are sensing now is not pressure to perform. It is an invitation to recognize what has already been acknowledged about you. Someone looked closely enough to notice the spaces between your words, the pauses in your decisions, the restraint you practiced when reaction would have cost you your peace. Chosen one, this is where many misunderstand divine movement. They assume that if heaven is involved, everything must feel dramatic. But most true interventions arrive quietly, almost easily missed. I remember a time when help came disguised as a simple conversation, a brief message, a moment I nearly dismissed as coincidence. Only later did I understand that it had been the hinge point. That is why staying present matters. Not because you are proving faith, but because awareness keeps the door open long enough for alignment to settle. Anointed one, there is something important to name. What is happening now did not begin with money. It began with observation. Someone noticed how you handled loss, how you carried disappointment without becoming cruel, how you kept giving even when you were told to stop because it cost too much. Heaven watches patterns, not moments, and when patterns reveal integrity under pressure, provision becomes a tool rather than a temptation. That is when resources can move without destroying the one who receives them. Chosen one, I have seen people receive sudden provision and collapse under the weight of it because they were still trying to fill old wounds. That is not your story. The reason this moment feels steady instead of chaotic is because you have already done much of the internal work. You learned how to sit with discomfort. You learned how to wait without numbing yourself. You learned how to stand when no one was watching. That kind of formation cannot be rushed, and it cannot be faked. Anointed one, when Scripture speaks of being faithful in little, it is not praising scarcity, it is honoring consistency. The little moments where you chose truth over convenience. The quiet decisions where you protected your integrity even when it cost you opportunity. I remember turning down something once that would have solved a problem quickly, but left a residue I could not carry. It took longer after that, but when provision finally arrived, it came clean. That is how this works. Clean movement follows clean alignment. Chosen one. This is why leaving too soon changes how things land. Timing is not punishment or reward, it is placement. When you stay present, you stay positioned. When you rush away, you interrupt the handoff. What is moving toward you needs your awareness more than your action. Awareness is agreement. Agreement is what allows momentum to complete its path. That is why this moment feels delicate, not fragile, but precise. Anointed one, there is also this truth. The person who acted was not alone in their decision. Influence does not always look spiritual from the outside. Sometimes it feels like a sudden thought that will not go away, a nudge that keeps returning, a sense of fairness that demands response. I have been on both sides of that exchange. There were times I felt compelled to help someone without fully understanding why. Only later did I see how perfectly timed it had been. That is heaven working through ordinary hands. Chosen one, you are standing in a place where past endurance is meeting present movement. That is why memories surface now. Not to reopen pain, but to show contrast. You can feel the difference between who you were when you carried those moments and who you are now. That difference matters. It is evidence. When your soul goes still like this, it is because something recognizes safety. Safety allows growth. Growth invites increase. Anointed one, listen carefully to this. The signal you received was not meant to fix everything. It was meant to confirm something. Confirmation changes posture. When posture changes, paths realign. I have watched entire seasons shift because one small confirmation restored someone's willingness to trust. That is often all heaven needs. A soft yes. A willingness to remain. A refusal to numb out or rush ahead. Chosen one. This is not the peak, it is the turn. What follows depends less on striving and more on steadiness. Let your breathing slow, let your attention remain. The movement happening now is intelligent, it knows where to go, it knows when to arrive, and it responds to those who can hold presence without panic. Stay here, the alignment is still settling, and the next part will reveal what this moment is preparing you to carry. Chosen one. What you are feeling now is the aftershock of recognition. Not excitement, not fear, but a grounded awareness that something has already shifted. I remember sitting in that exact space once, realizing that the thing I had waited years for did not arrive with fireworks, but with clarity. It was quieter than expected, and stronger than anything I could have forced. That is how real change announces itself. It does not demand attention, it commands respect. Anointed one, understand this clearly. The wealth or provision moving toward you is not the destination. It is the signal that the destination has accepted you. Many chase outcomes without becoming the kind of person who can live inside them. You did the opposite. You became steady first. You learned discernment first. You learned restraint first. That is why when movement comes, it does not overwhelm you. It meets you at your current capacity. Chosen one. There is a reason this happened when your steps slowed but did not stop. Heaven does not intervene when we are reckless, and it does not rush when we are frozen. It moves when we are walking, even tired, even unsure, but still facing forward. I have lived long enough to see this pattern repeat without exception. The moment help arrives is often the moment after we decide not to quit, even though quitting would have made sense to everyone else. Anointed one, someone noticed how you carried responsibility when no one was clapping. How you stayed kind when bitterness would have been justified. How you did not advertise your sacrifices. That kind of strength creates a different kind of response. It does not attract sympathy. It attracts alignment. When fairness begins correcting itself, it does so quietly. Balances shift, doors loosen, and suddenly, what once felt immovable begins to open. Chosen one. This is where many misunderstand blessing. They think it arrives to reward effort. In truth, it arrives to support direction. What is being supported in you right now is not ambition, but trajectory. You are moving towards something that requires stability, not urgency. That is why silence has played such a large role in your life. Silence trains discernment. Silence strengthens hearing. Silence prepares you to recognize when movement is real and when it is noise. Anointed one, I want to speak from experience here. The moments that changed my life the most were the ones where I stopped trying to interpret everything and simply stayed present. When I resisted the urge to overthink, clarity settled naturally. When I stopped chasing explanations, understanding arrived. This is one of those moments. The less you grasp, the more aligns. The less you rush, the more reveals itself. Chosen one. The signal that arrived was precise because it had to be. Too small, and you would have ignored it. Too large, and it would have shaken your foundation. This was measured. Intentional. Perfectly scaled to who you are now. That is how you know it was guided. Randomness does not calibrate. Wisdom does. And wisdom knows exactly how much is needed to get your attention without pulling you out of yourself. Anointed one, notice how your body responded. Not panic, not greed. Stillness. That response matters. It shows readiness. It shows that what is coming will not own you. You will steward it. I have seen people lose themselves when increase arrived because they were still seeking validation. You are not seeking validation. You are seeking alignment. That difference protects you. Chosen one. This moment marks a pivot that does not reverse easily. Not because everything becomes easy, but because clarity changes how you walk. When clarity arrives, old doubts lose their authority. Old fears lose their grip. You begin making decisions from center rather than from scarcity. That is when paths appear. Not all at once, but one by one, as needed. Anointed one, there is more ahead than what you can currently name, and that is intentional. If you could see everything now, you might rush. Instead, you are being asked to remain grounded, to let movement complete itself, to trust that what has begun knows how to finish. I have learned that divine processes do not need supervision, they need cooperation. Chosen one, stay with this stillness, let it do its work. What you are standing in now is not coincidence, and it is not fleeting. It is the beginning of a stretch where things line up faster than before, not because you push harder, but because resistance has been removed. The next part will take you deeper into what this alignment is reshaping and why this moment matters more than it first appears. Chosen one. There is a kind of tiredness that does not come from doing too much, but from holding something precious for a long time without visible movement. It settles into the bones quietly. You still function, still show up, still carry responsibility, but the fire burns lower than it once did. I know that season well. It is the place where enthusiasm has matured into endurance, where faith no longer feels dramatic, only necessary. This is not failure. This is formation. Anointed one. The waiting you have lived inside was not empty time. It was time spent learning how to return to center again and again. Return after disappointment. Return after silence. Return after hoping quietly and seeing nothing change on the surface. There were days you did not feel spiritual or strong. You simply chose not to abandon yourself. That choice matters more than moments of inspiration ever could. Heaven weighs consistency differently than emotion. Chosen one. When the promise is real but the timeline stretches, something subtle happens. You stop leaning on adrenaline and start leaning on memory. You remember who carried you through before. You remember moments you did not think you would survive, yet did. I remember washing dishes late at night, exhausted, wondering if anything I believed would ever move. Nothing miraculous happened in those moments, but something solid formed. That solidity is what allows promise to mature without collapsing you when it arrives. Anointed one, endurance is rarely praised, but it is always rewarded. Not with spectacle, but with trust. Trust is why movement can be placed in your hands now. You learned how to keep going without applause. You learned how to wait without numbing yourself. You learned how to return to the same quiet truths when emotions fluctuated. This is the kind of faith that does not break under delay. It deepens. Chosen one. There were ordinary mornings where you showed up anyway. Not energized, not certain, but present. You moved through responsibilities while carrying unanswered questions. You prayed without hearing anything back. You hoped without proof. Those were not wasted days. Those were days where roots grew. I have seen how shallow faith collapses when increase comes too quickly. You were spared that. Your roots had time to spread before the weight arrived. Anointed one, this is why the current stillness feels different. It is not the stillness of stagnation. It is the stillness of something finishing its work beneath the surface. There is less urgency now, not because the promise faded, but because trust has replaced panic. When trust arrives, you no longer need constant reassurance. You know how to return to what steadies you when the noise gets loud again. Chosen one. I want to speak gently into the fatigue you may not name out loud. The weariness that comes from being strong for too long, from holding space for others while managing your own inner battles, from staying upright when it would have been easier to sit down and let things pass you by. That weariness has been seen, not as weakness, but as evidence of responsibility carried with integrity. Anointed one. Faith at this stage is not loud. It does not demand signs every hour. It remembers. It returns. It repeats what is true, even when the surroundings do not echo it back. I have learned that my own faith steadied most when I stopped chasing explanations and kept returning to the same simple anchor that had carried me before. There is a quiet reminder resting gently in the description or the pinned comment below. Chosen one. What matters now is not intensity, but faithfulness to your inner posture. The promise does not need you to feel powerful every day. It needs you to remain aligned. Alignment is maintained through return to stillness, return to discernment, return to the understanding that what is unfolding does not require your anxiety to accelerate it. Anointed one. Daily faith looks unspectacular. It looks like choosing honesty when it would be easier to perform. It looks like resting when your body signals it needs rest. It looks like not forcing movement before clarity settles. I have learned that forcing almost always delays what patience allows to arrive cleanly. You are no longer in the phase where effort impresses heaven. You are in the phase where steadiness protects what is coming. Chosen one. The promise did not forget you during the wait. It was learning how to meet you without disrupting the life you have built through endurance. That matters. You are not being rescued from your life. You are being met inside it. That is a different kind of intervention, one that strengthens rather than replaces who you have become. Anointed one, there will be days ahead that feel ordinary again. Do not mistake ordinary for absence. Often the most important shifts happen while life looks unchanged on the outside. Keep returning, keep remembering, keep staying present without demanding proof. This is how you remain positioned without exhausting yourself. Chosen one. The waiting season taught you how to carry yourself. Now you carry that posture forward, not rushing, not retreating, simply standing in quiet agreement with what has already been set in motion. This part of the journey does not require more from you. It requires less resistance. And that is something you already know how to give. Chosen one. There comes a stage where movement begins to feel inevitable rather than hoped for. Not because everything is visible yet, but because resistance has thinned. You are standing in that space now. The waiting taught you how to hold yourself steady. This part teaches you how to notice what is quietly rearranging around you. I remember realizing one day that obstacles I once fought against were no longer there. Not removed dramatically, just no longer in the way. That is how alignment often reveals itself. What once drained you stops demanding your energy. Anointed one, pay attention to what no longer fits. Old reactions, old fears, old patterns that once felt necessary for survival. They loosen when purpose draws closer. This is not because you outgrew them by force, but because you no longer need them. Heaven does not rip things away without reason. It allows them to fall away naturally when their role is finished. That is happening now. Subtly, without announcement. Chosen one. You may notice that conversations feel different, that certain opportunities no longer pull at you the same way, that some desires have gone quiet. This is not loss. This is focus refining itself. I have walked through seasons where I mourned things I once wanted, only to realize later that their absence made room for something far more fitting. When clarity increases, distraction loses its appeal. That is not discipline. That is discernment maturing. Anointed one, this is also the stage where fairness completes its correction. Not loudly, not through confrontation, through repositioning. You are moved out of environments that cannot support what you are about to carry. I have learned that protection often looks like redirection rather than defense. When certain doors no longer open, it is not rejection, it is preservation. What is meant to arrive needs a stable place to land. Chosen one. There is an internal shift happening as well. You are less reactive, less desperate to explain yourself, less inclined to prove what you know is true. That quiet confidence is not pride. It is peace settling into place. Peace is what allows provision to flow without chaos. Peace is what keeps increase from becoming a burden. This is why your inner life was shaped first. Without peace, acceleration destroys. With peace, it serves. Anointed one, I want to speak from lived experience here. The most dangerous moment in any transition is when impatience returns disguised as motivation. When you feel the shift and try to rush it forward, resist that urge gently. Let movement finish its work. I once stepped ahead of timing because I mistook readiness for permission. It cost me unnecessary struggle. What is unfolding now does not need your push. It responds better to your presence. Chosen one. Notice how your awareness has sharpened. You sense when to speak and when to remain silent. You feel when something is aligned and when it is not. That sensitivity is not weakness. It is preparation. Those who carry weight must sense imbalance early. This is how stewardship begins long before anything tangible arrives. You are being trained to notice small shifts before they become large consequences. Anointed one, the signal that initiated this movement continues to hum beneath the surface. It has not faded. It has integrated. That is important. When something integrates, it becomes part of how you move, rather than something you chase. I have seen people lose their grounding by fixating on outcomes. You are being spared that by learning how to let outcomes come to you. Chosen one. This part of the journey is quieter than the beginning. That is intentional. Noise attracts interference. Silence allows precision. You are being positioned with care. What is meant to meet you will do so cleanly, without confusion, without drama, without fragmentation. That is a gift. Many never experience it because they never learned how to slow down enough to receive it. Anointed one, stay aware without becoming watchful. Stay open without becoming anxious. The alignment is not fragile, it is intelligent, and it is adjusting around you even now. This is not the end of the process. It is the narrowing that precedes clarity. The next part will bring understanding to what is being refined and why this stage matters more than it appears. Chosen one. As things narrow, truth becomes easier to recognize. Not because it grows louder, but because there is less noise competing with it. You are entering a phase where decisions feel simpler, even when circumstances remain complex. That simplicity is a sign of alignment. I remember reaching a point where I no longer needed to debate every choice. Something inside me had settled enough to recognize direction without strain. That is what is forming in you now. Anointed one, this is also where trust deepens beyond belief. Belief hopes, trust rests. Trust does not need to see the full map. It only needs to know the next step will be revealed when required. You have practiced this already, more than you realize. Every time you kept moving without clarity, trust strengthened quietly. That is why now, when movement approaches, you are not overwhelmed by it. Chosen one. There is a temptation at this stage to look backward and measure progress. To compare where you are now with where you thought you would be. Release that comparison. It distorts perception. I have learned that the path rarely looks like the picture I held at the beginning. What mattered was not accuracy of vision, but willingness to keep walking when the picture changed. You have done that. That flexibility is part of your readiness. Anointed one, what is being prepared for you requires adaptability more than certainty. Fixed expectations break when reality unfolds differently. Adaptive trust bends without breaking. You learned how to adjust without losing yourself. That is rare. That is valuable. That is why the movement coming toward you will not destabilize your life. It will integrate into it. Chosen one. Notice how your sense of identity has quieted. You are less defined by roles, labels, or outcomes. You are more anchored in presence. That is not detachment, it is grounding. When identity stabilizes, external changes no longer threaten it. I have watched people lose themselves the moment things improved because their identity was tied to struggle. You are not anchored there anymore. You are anchored in something deeper. Anointed one, this is also where humility protects you. Not the kind that shrinks, but the kind that listens. You remain teachable, even as clarity increases. That posture keeps guidance flowing. The moment we assume we have arrived, movement slows. You have not assumed arrival. You have remained attentive. That keeps the channel clear. Chosen one. The promise is close enough now that preparation matters more than anticipation. Preparation does not mean planning every detail. It means staying aligned with your values. It means continuing to choose integrity when shortcuts appear. It means honoring rest when pressure increases. I have learned that rest is often the final act of trust before breakthrough.